We have big news for the type 1 diabetes community. Eledon Pharmaceuticals was just featured in HCP Live, which is Healthcare Professionals Live. This article is talking about their phenomenal results in functionally curing people with type 1 diabetes, 12 people to be exact. HCP Live is generally targeted towards physicians, but I'm going to bring this awesome article to you guys. It was authored by Abigail Brooks and fact-checked by Ryan Livingston. If you have not been following this trial, Eledon has functionally cured 12 people with type 1 diabetes. Below me is a graph showing the A1Cs of 3 of those patients. You can see how they started at 7.8, 8.7, 7.3, and now their A1Cs have all dropped within 4 or 5 weeks to the low 5s. They're all functionally cured of type 1 diabetes with no toxicity and no adverse effects. So these 12 patients received new pancreatic islet cells that regulate blood sugar, and Eledon's drug, which is a CD40 ligand inhibitor called tegoprubart, protected those cells from rejection, and it did so without causing any toxicity or adverse effects. If you just gave someone with type 1 diabetes new pancreatic islet cells without protecting them with Eledon's drug, they would be dead within hours. So Eledon's drug is protecting these cells phenomenally well while avoiding calcineurin inhibitor toxicities. They're talking about tacrolimus, which has been the standard of care for all organ transplant for the last 30 years. It's a really terrible drug with lots of toxicities and side effects. The next point says that rapid blood sugar control was observed by 4 weeks with a tight A1C control. The next point says that there were no rejection episodes and there were no antibody productions that would try to kill off these new islet cells. If getting these 12 patients completely off of insulin by about a month after islet cell transplant wasn't big enough news, and by the way, a month is extremely fast, they did so without causing any toxicity or side effects that typically come with tacrolimus, which is the current standard of care, which is a calcineurin inhibitor. It's a really nasty drug. So there are 2 huge things coming out of this article. They're functionally curing people of type 1 diabetes within about a month, and they're doing so without causing any toxicity to the kidneys, to the nervous system, or to the beta cells that produce insulin themselves, all of which happen with tacrolimus, the current standard of care. This is Eledon's CEO, D.A. Gross, and I want to read to you a quote from the article from him that is really exciting. He says, patients with type 1 diabetes have been waiting decades for a potential functional cure, and it is very encouraging to see meaningful progress in that direction through the emerging promise of tegoprubart. Eledon provided HCP Live with a statement, and I want you to pay special attention to the last sentence. Really exciting stuff. I'm going to move out of the way and read it with you. It says, these latest findings support the potential of tegoprubart to enable effective islet graft protection while avoiding the toxicities often associated with calcineurin inhibitors, and potentially enable access to islet cell transplantation for individuals living with type 1 diabetes. We are proud to contribute to these important ongoing research efforts and support the work of Dr. Witkowski and the team at Chicago Medicine. Here's the really exciting part. We also look forward to working closely with the FDA towards our goal of receiving regulatory guidance on a path to market approval in islet cell transplant later this year. You guys, they are planning on meeting with the FDA this year to discuss a pivotal trial design so that they can receive approval for this indication to functionally cure type 1 diabetes. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what does. I'm going to finish off with this really exciting data that they posted in the article. So the average person in this trial had type 1 diabetes for 33 years, and their average A1C was 8.0. And then after just 4 weeks after their islet cell transplant, their A1Cs were below 6.0. And to date, they checked the first 10 patients, and their A1C has an average of 5.35. The only reason why the last 2 weren't included is because they were dosed very recently, and we know number 11 is already off insulin, and number 12 should be off any day now. If you missed my last video about the FDA, this is Dr. Marty Makary, who is the commissioner of the FDA right now. He got up just a few days ago last week, and he talked about how he wants to see a cure for type 1 diabetes. And that was the first disease he listed when he started talking about cures for diseases. So the FDA is laser focused on this as well. You guys, this is really exciting stuff.